Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at a Blitz deck that's pretty much the exact opposite of the one we looked at last week. Last week we looked at a Yoji Fatigue deck. This week we're going to look at a Data Doll deck. Data Doll is a hero that pretty much no one plays because, let's be honest, she isn't very good. Mainly because she only has 3 intellect, but there are ways we can sort of work around this. They did give her a new specialization microprocessor from Everfest, so let's take a look at Datadol and see if she can try to compete with some of the other aggro decks in the Blitz format. First, let's take a look at the actual hero, because I'm not sure if many of you will know what Datadol actually does. Datadol is a 3 intellect, 20 health mechanologist hero. She's a young hero, and she is the only hero in the game with a starting intellect that isn't 4. Whenever a mechanologist item with cost 2 or less is put into your banish zone from your deck, you can just put it into play. So I can understand the idea of giving her less intellect, since if you hit an item, you're getting the resources for that item for free, you're getting to put the item into play for free, it's like you drew it, which, to be fair, is pretty strong. There are a lot of items that you'll see when we take a look at the deck that are just really good, and it's nice to get them into play for free, but the problem comes down to you're also going to end up being attacking with 1 less attack each turn. A lot of the mech attacks do cost some amount of resource to actually play, so unless you have a card in Arsenal, you're probably only swinging with 2 attacks a turn, which are super easy to block and just hit back. So the way you have to play this deck is a little different from how you'd think you'd want to play other aggro decks. You kind of want to end up holding back at some point to try and get a card into your arsenal, so you can have that 4-card hand. Maybe you have 1 or 2 microprocessors in play, you can filter it a bit. You just want to be able to set up a actual strong turn that can make it fine for you to be swinging with, these minimal amount card hands. And some of the cards we do play in this deck do help with that, allowing you to get a little bit extra damage in each turn. So let's take a look at the weapon we're playing, the main way we're going to be doing this. Originally, I had the newer gun, I forget what it's called, the one that when you boost 3 times it gets a steam counter in here, but that ended up not being good at all, because when are you attacking 3 times with boost cards in Datadol when you only have 3 cards in your hand? So I ended up switching back to the Teklo Plasma Pistol. This is the basic pistol that you'll see most mechs play. It just has the effect to remove a steam counter to shoot it, and to pay a resource and put a steam counter on it if there are no steam counters on it. This is how we're going to be getting our extra attack in each turn, just an extra shot for 2, since every attack in this deck has boost, which means they all pretty much have go again. We can easily get extra resources together with our chest piece, which we will talk about, and get in an extra shot with the pistol and try to just get in extra damage as we can. Since this is an aggro deck, we do need to try and win as fast as possible. The other equipment in this deck are pretty basic. Crown of Providence is here, because what other helmet are you going to play in Mechanologist? Tekla Foundry Heart is here, so we can get a little extra resources. Since some hands can be a little resource intensive, Tekla Foundry Heart is perfect, as well as it does give us 3 extra health, which is pretty nice. Goliath Gauntlet is here just for some extra damage. You can play whatever glove you want, it really does not matter. Goliath Gauntlet's good here though, because Throttle costs 2 and Jumpstart costs 2, so we do have and Combustible Courier cost 2, so we do have 10 attacks that we can use with the Goliath Gauntlet. And Achilles Accelerator is here just so we can shoot with the pistol twice. This is actually pretty important. Since we gain the extra action point, we can use it after we shoot the pistol if we have an extra resource to shoot it again. So this can be an extra way to do 2 damage. As well, it is some native arcane barrier, so we can save some more sideboard equipment slots, which we don't really use too often. Looking at our extra equipment, Visortronic Model I is here just because it's Arcane Barrier 2. And that's it. The effect is okay, but I mean, microprocessor does the same thing, and we don't want to ever break this if we're bringing it in to use the effect anyway. We have a couple of Spellfray here, gloves and chest. These are here because there's no world where we should be paying for more than 3 Arcane Barrier. And since we already have the shoes, this is just so much better to just have the Spellfray for the Spell Void. Mage Master Boots are here because there are sometimes, mainly in a control matchup, a slower matchup, not so much a control matchup, I guess, where you boosting a lot is really bad, and so your game plan needs to shift to how can I set up items to where I can hit my opponent for more damage right away, and you can't really do that without boosting. So as an example, you find Teklo Pounder, but you also have another item in hand, which this is definitely going to happen against a control deck since these items can't block. They're just going to be stuck in your hand the whole time. So Mage Master Boots are for those slower matchups to where your game plan doesn't turn into I need to boost every turn to try to kill them. It turns into play it slow, get arsenal cards, get set up, find items. Because Achilles Accelerator giving you an extra gunshot really doesn't matter. Which, also, these boots can be literally anything. Anything past these 3 anti-arcane damage and like the Galvatronic Bender can be whatever you want. You don't need these Mage Master Boots, you can play whatever. But personally, I like this for those types of matchups. Gambler's Gloves are here literally just for KO, because what other deck rolls that many dice? I guess Reinar as well, but they aren't really doing that in Blitz. It's just you die instantly against KO, and he's out there. So, and you don't have to play this. You can play whatever, similar to Mage Master Boots. And then the Galvanic Bender here are just because they are block. If you wanted to, you could, I guess, play a Mechanoid Datadol, but I guess that would be a list for a different time. Maybe that will be a list in the future that I do, since this deck actually does play a lot of things that you do see in Mechanoid. So if you wanted to, I'm sure you could easily slide it in, because you have the Model I, the Bender, the Accelerator, the Teklo Heart, and obviously your weapon. So it's out there, but this is here in case you ever need an extra block. Now let's take a look at this deck's main deck. This deck is 2 red Combustible Courier, 2 red High Speed Impact, 2 red and 2 yellow Hyperdriver, 2 red Jumpstart, 2 Pulse Wave Harpoon, all 6 copies of T-Bone, Throttle, 0 to 60, and Zipper Hit, and then finally 2 Microprocessor and 2 Teklo Pounder. Looking a bit more in depth into this deck list, you can see that we do play a lot of the just vanilla boost attacks that Mech has access to, because they're just generally the best ones. They do the most damage. Throttle is a 2 cost at red that does 6. Zipper Hit's a 1 that does 5. 0 to 60 is a 0 that does 4. They're just the baseline cards that we need to be playing because they're just the strongest attacks and we're limited on the amount of cards we're going to get each turn. Some of the other attacks that aren't those, T-Bone is another free attack that in a lot of matchups gets some pretty important equipment if we find these in multiples. This is probably the other best 0 cost mech attack, so we're playing all 6 copies of it. Our others are in red, starting with Pulse Wave Harpoon. This is only in red because it's a Majestic. This can get cards out of our opponent's hand, but it's mainly here because it is one of the stronger boost attacks that mech has access to. Jumpstart is here because if we have a Hyperdriver in play and we're playing 4, it turns into a Zipper Hit. I wouldn't play more than the red, but it also gets effect from our Goliath Gauntlet if we need it, so it is pretty useful. High Speed Impact gives our next attack we boost Dominate, which is pretty good, and Combustible Courier gives the next attack we boost +3 attack if either of them hit, but they're just more damage or guaranteed damage. That's really all they're in here for. Looking at some of our items, Hyperdrivers are here so we can get a bit of extra resource. If we have a Hyperdriver in play, we can start with something like a 0 to 60 or a T-Bone, get the resource off the Hyperdriver, and then go into one of our 1 cost attacks like our Zipper Hit or our High Speed Impact or our Pulse Wave Harpoon, or that can be our 1 resource we need to use our Teklo Foundry Heart, which can turn into a Throttle or a Combustible Courier. So it's really just here to get that 1 resource we need to get started, and it is pretty important. The last 2 cards in the deck, the Teklo Pounder and the Microprocessor. I'm going to start with the Teklo Pounder. This is just a card that can help you get a bit of extra damage. Once per turn, when we boost an attack, we remove a steam counter to give that attack +2. We can do that 3 times. Hitting this item is like getting an extra 6 damage, so it is pretty strong. And then the Microprocessor is the Data Doll specialization. It has a few effects. Its first effect is to opt 1, its second is to draw and put a card from your hand on top, and its third is to banish the top card of your deck. It also has the effect that the first time you activate Microprocessor each turn, you do get an action point, so your first effect is just free. Normally, we will be doing the banish the top card or draw a card and put a card from your hand on top. We generally won't be using the opt effect since we'd rather, say, use the banish if we don't have an item in hand to try and hit an item, or if we have an item in hand, we'll be using the draw and put on top effect to find something else and then put that item on top, so we can then hit that item off of Data Doll's effect. In prior builds, I did have more items, however, that deck couldn't present enough attacks to kill an opponent that was just playing on the defensive, so we ended up cutting a lot of them. There are a few other Data Doll builds you could play. I've seen Data Doll builds focus on the Teklo Plasma Pistol and play a bit more defensive. However, if you're going to do that, I think you should just play Dash instead. I think it's more consistent. And if you were going to play a Mechanoid build, I think Data Doll is pretty good. However, it might have some troubles finding the actual Mechanoid since you are drawing that 1 less card a turn. So, personally, I think this is the best way you could be playing Data Doll, using how strong Microprocessor is to try and get extra card advantage, but even then, Data Doll isn't the strongest hero, although I do think that she could actually win games, just you won't see her winning any major events anytime soon, especially since Blitz is such a fast format that a deck like this that needs to get pretty lucky to go so fast isn't going to be able to keep up. And in decks that try to slow the format down, something like the deck I showed last week being like the Yoji Fatigue deck, it's going to be very hard for this deck to win just because it is Mechanologist. And that makes it really hard because you're losing cards in your deck every turn more than what a normal deck would. So Datadol definitely has some problems. However, Dusk Till Dawn, we could see something come Datadol's way. Probably not a new spec, probably just whatever random broken Mechanologist card they're going to put in that set because Mech doesn't have any new heroes on the horizon. I'm not sure where we're going after Dusk Till Dawn, but for the next, 3-4 months, we're just going to have what's in Dusk Till Dawn for Mech, and even maybe past that, maybe another 3 months after if we don't get another Mechanologist. So, Mech has to probably get something, and maybe it'll be pretty useful for Datadol, but for now, I think this is a pretty good list if you did want to play Datadol. That's going to be it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Next week, I think we'll take a look at a constructed deck. I know I haven't done one of those in a few weeks. That should be Rhinar, a deck that I find really fun. Probably my second favorite class outside of Ninja. So I can't wait to show you all what I am playing with that. But with that said, I hope you all had a good day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.